No, Rach and I lived in San Francisco for a time. Rach got her MFA in classical acting from the American Conservatory Theater, which took us there, and I went to San Francisco State. Thank you. It was a fun time, and we were both kind of soaking up every bit of learning, right? Whether that was inside of our classroom or without. The conservatory program that Rach was a part of, well, like most conservatories, was intense. It was 3 years of 14-hour days, 6 days a week, sometimes more. So she lived the theater, breathed the theater, dreamed the theater. And whether I wanted to or not, by virtue of sharing life with her, I also breathed, dreamed, and lived the theater. If she was learning Tai Chi, well, that meant I was learning Tai Chi. And for 3 years, I listened to hour after hour of IPA notes and standard American dialect, which I do not have, as you can tell. And when she was studying clown, dear God, I never thought that unit was going to end. Their teacher was no joke, and when a joke would or a bit would land flatly and fail, she would tell the clown, "You're not funny, clown, sit down." So many tears, so many tears. Now, one of the fundamentals that was a part of her training was to learn and practice the Alexander technique. And if you don't know what that is, it's a technique that helps folks move with comfort and breathe with ease, with less stress and harmful impact on the body. So a lot of actors and musicians, athletes, singers, and dancers often learn and use this technique because their crafts rely so heavily on their bodies, right? And repetitive small movements. It is really cool. And it can be life-changing. It certainly was for Rach. Their instructor, as a part of that Alexander work, gave them an exercise one day, and I still remember it. The students were supposed to walk around the city with their heads up. Now, this seems pretty simple, right? But if you think about how we walk around most of the time, we look down, right? We look down, our necks pinched, our shoulders hunched, and very, very tight. So they were to look out towards the horizon, shoulders released and relaxed, head lifted lightly above those shoulders instead of pressed into our chest, right? So off they went. They rose from their seats, aiming to embrace the seemingly simple challenge, imagining that they would glide delicately out of the classroom, down the hallway, into the elevator, and out onto the streets, moving with grace. This was not the case. They bumped into rows of chairs, knocked into each other, tripped over uneven sidewalks, all while looking far less than graceful. Turns out, this simple correction, a slight but intentional shift in orientation, can have dramatic, powerful effects. To truly make that shift in course correction, of course, it takes so much exercise, loads of practice. It takes real and sustained effort to change how you literally stand in the world and what you're looking at. It requires a total transformation to orient to the horizon, and certainly what is beyond it, instead of what's right at our feet. That's what we're considering today, friends. We need to get to figure out for ourselves and for our community what North Star orients us and draws us forward. While we live in this hurt and hurting world, what vision of a new world wakes us up in the morning, encourages us to keep on? And how does that new world, that new way that we're imagining, inform literally where we put our bodies, dictating where and how we show up, what guides each choice that we make, action that we take. Which way is up? Now, our gospel passage is almost like it's a working session for teasing out North Star values in a cloud-covered world. The stories that Mark tells us live in this tension of what is and what might be. We see Jesus intentionally bumping into and pushing past these dearly held conventions of the way that things are, the way that the world is. So we get to try right alongside that community of religious authorities and disciples to figure out why he's doing this. What is Jesus pointing to on the horizon or even just beyond it? Keeping Sabbath was really serious stuff for every single person in that community. It's not taken lightly by Jesus or the disciples or the Pharisee leaders. As observant Jews, all of them, they're invested in following that commandment. But here we have Jesus, who appears to be kind of thumbing his nose at the custom, his own custom, mind you. When these disciples just pick grain and eat it on the Sabbath, Jesus doesn't intervene. He doesn't stop it. And when Jesus encounters someone he can heal, he does so on the Sabbath. And where we really might want to jump in there and say, well, Jesus was prioritizing people in urgent need, we got to remind ourselves that's really not the case here. There's no emergency in either of the examples. The disciples, well, they're just walking through a field and they're a little peckish. They want a snack. They're not dying of hunger. And the person in the temple, look back, they didn't ask to be healed. Surely Jesus could have waited a couple hours till sundown to offer it. So what's up? What's up here? What is guiding Jesus? Now, it seems to me that Jesus is offering us kind of a radical reimagining of being in relationship with God, a new vision for encountering holiness each day, every day. The Sabbath, its aim is to prioritize and make time to be with God, holy time. It's allowing us space and time to savor and rest in God's abiding presence. It's a time to experience that true communion with the divine. It's good stuff. And I think Jesus is asking us to set out our moral and spiritual compass on the North Star, to not settle for what is, but to look for constant communion with God. He sees his community being guided not by a vision of a world at one with the divine, but being oriented towards the systems they've created, the ones that they can contain and control. But the priority is the connection, right? Not the limitation to that connection. So Jesus directs us to the essence of the Sabbath, and it surpasses these human-conceived ordinances. God's presence with us, and in return, our deep presence with God kind of busts out of the limits that we're placing on it. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel writes this about the Sabbath. Sabbath comes with its own holiness. We enter not simply a day, but an atmosphere. We are within the Sabbath, rather than the Sabbath being within us. Strict adherence to the laws regulating Sabbath observance, well, it doesn't suffice, he writes. The goal is creating the Sabbath as a foretaste of paradise. The Sabbath is a metaphor for paradise and a testimony to God's presence. Unless one learns how to relish the state of Sabbath, one will be unable to enjoy the taste of eternity in the world to come. So I think this paradise, time and space, that's the North Star. When we are eternally and forever with God. But living out that way can start in the present moment. It doesn't have to wait for anything, certainly not death. Jesus tries to push the cloud cover aside to reveal that kind of a vision for his community. It can not only be a destination, see, but a path for how to get there. Today's worship, this North Star theme, comes to us out of the work of Souls in Solidarity and our team, and from our guiding text, Liberating Church. The hope, the purpose of Souls in Solidarity is to keep us actively engaged as a community, always reflecting back and visioning forward, how we can be a more liberated and liberating community. So we know becoming an anti-racist community is lifelong work. We know that no one study, one book, one direct action, one worship service is going to get us to our destination. No. But we keep at it. We keep at it. We move towards it steadily and with commitment. And so each calendar quarter, we come back together diligently to check in, to see how we're doing, to figure out what we need to learn, what we need to unlearn, and in fact, what we need, because we are who we are, to relearn. How we can shift our orientation towards the vision of being a North Star place. Imagine that. The writers of Liberating Church remind us that for enslaved persons in the American South, the North Star came to symbolize the possibility of a new world, a free and just world, a world free of domination and oppression. That story, that starting place, is not everybody's here, and we know that. We need to remember that. But we honor and remember those for whom the North Star lit the way out of real horrors of slavery, the dangers of migrating, and the risks taken as refugees. The North Star's light and its lure literally pulled communities through unimaginable struggle and towards survival. Their experiences and their wisdom handed down with care to us. These are sacred texts, and we can learn from them. We must learn from them. And we can do that in community, how a faithful, world-changing vision can guide us all. The North Star power and its promise can be realized with our incremental and intentional actions with the Spirit as we sojourn towards it. By setting it as a point of reference to love and liberation, it can shift and inform every single thing we do. It pulls us towards collective and continual journey of decolonializing our souls. The writers remind us this. For those of us that participate in liberating churches, we should see that to be filled with the Spirit is to be filled with the grace and energy to struggle and to build a new world in the midst of one characterized by idolatry and oppression, where we are fixed on living out the love and justice of God right now, even as we do so from the heart of the empire, from our world. So our Souls team, as I like to call us, got together the other day to plan this worship and the program after worship, which I encourage you to stay for, and the Connect and Care lesson, which we're doing this week. We had a rich and lively discussion. Julia, Marjorie, David, Carol, Benz, Andrea, Aurora, Terry, Jim, and I filled an hour or more, truth be told, with thinking about all of the aspects of this North Star value and what we can learn from it, what we need to keep front and center and on the horizon as we journey together. We got in there right? We were throwing around aspects of the value that light us up or that spark in us a new way of just getting free. And it occurred to me kind of right in the mix of everything as I was filling 4 pages of notes, like I do. This is what it's about. This actually is what it's about, right? We have to imagine here in our world, Jesus jostling us out of complacency and routines that we are, just really dependent on and love so very, very much, but limit God's movement so very, very much. We have to imagine with a bold and faithful act that Jesus demands us to question what we're doing so we can keep unlearning oppression, so we can keep moving north. We got to keep asking ourselves, where are we going? How are we getting there? We got to make sure that we're actively leaving behind all that's going to oppress and restrict freedom and the fullness of all God's creation. We know that love and liberation, they're the coordinates that are going to get us there. We know this. So when we're going to get in the mire, because we will, and when our way is obscured, because it will be, we have to ask ourselves, which way's up? Which way is headed to freedom land, to abolition, to clean water, to breathable air, to equitable access to power and voice? So we got to look for the light on the horizon, coming from that direction, and let's go there.